Hello students, today let us discuss a very beautiful poem by Thomas Gray, and that is his Elegy written in a country churchyard. You may have watched my earlier videos and you can have a detailed note on the specific features of an elegy. Please watch my video on elegy as a form of poetry. Now, before I go any further, I would like to tell you that Thomas Gray belongs to the pre-romantic group of poets. Who are the pre-romantic poets? They are often called the transitional poets as well. Well, who are the pre-romantic or the transitional poets? These poets are the poets who began their compositions at the end of the neoclassical age and the beginning of the romantic age. That is, their poems carry the element of the neoclassical age, which was at its end, which was coming to an end, and the elements of the romantic age, which was just about to begin in English literature. Well, the other pre-romantic poets are Thomas Gray, William Cowper, William Blake, James Thomson, and Robert Burns. Now, what is the unique feature of Gray's elegy? In its simple definition, we all know that an elegy is a poem which laments the death of near and dear ones, friends, family, accomplished people, or popular leaders. But what is unique about this elegy? Well, this elegy is unique it because it mourns the death, it laments for the death not of the great or famous people but of common men and women. Often, the great and famous people are paid rich tributes, but the common man, his miseries and his unhappiness always remains forgotten by the world. So, Gray uses this elegy as an opportunity to lament the death of common, unheard, unsung people. The speaker, what is the occasion of this poem? The speaker of this poem, that is Thomas Gray himself, visits a country churchyard at sunset, and he is so affected by the graves that he sees in that churchyard that it forces him, it impels him to meditate on the nature of human mortality. There is some information which I am giving you which will help you answer the 1-mark question, and that is the elegy is a meditative poem. It is a reflective poem. It is a philosophical poem in which the poet Thomas Gray reflects about the human mortality and pain. Well, it is written in iambic pentameter quatrains and it was published in 1751. Now, what is he philosophing about, or what is this meditation or reflection about? As I told you, when Gray visited the graveyard in the churchyard, in a churchyard of Stoke Poges, he was very much pained and affected to see the graves of poor people. It got him to think that these people too had a lot of talent and potential, but because poverty and bad luck did not provide them opportunities to express their talents to the world, they died without showing their potential to the world. This affects Gray a lot, and therefore this poem is a reflection or a meditation on unused human potential and capacities and talents which remain unused, the conditions of country life and mortality. An elegy written in the country churchyard is one of the best known elegies in English literature. It is, though it is a long poem, but it is written in a very simple narrative style. So you will love to read it, and let us see what the poet says in the opening of the poem. The elegy opens with the narrator musing in a graveyard at close of the day. He speculates about the obscure lives of villagers who lie buried and suggests that they may have been full of rich promise, rich talent, and high potential that was ultimately stunted or retarded or not allowed to grow because of poverty or ignorance. The churchyard in the poem is believed to be that of Stoke Poges in Buckinghamshire, which Gray visited often, and incidentally, he himself lies buried in that churchyard. Now, before we go to an analysis of the literary devices, let me give you a brief outline about this poem. In this poem, primarily, Gray glorifies common men by making them equal to men who once had possession of power and wealth and heraldry. It is evening time in the first five stanzas, stanzas 1 to 5. He describes very beautifully nature at its best during the evening time. It is evening time, and the poet observes the stillness that is engulfing the rural landscapes. We all know that during evening time, everything and everyone begins to settle down, and all around there is a kind of tranquility, peace, quiet, and stillness. So this is exactly what Gray is describing, and there is a stillness that is engulfing the rural landscapes, and the poet Thomas Gray watches the ploughman and his cattle heading homewards. In stanzas 6 to 7, he very interestingly describes the rural domestic day-to-day activities, like children running outside to meet their father who is returning back from the fields or from a hard day's work. It is at this time he sees the simple unadorned graves of the rural folk buried under the shade of the yew trees, and that sets him thinking that he should write an elegy for these unheard, unsung people. Stanzas 8 to 18 begin. In stanzas 8 to 18, he sits under the shade of the yew trees and begins to reflect how death equalizes the rich as well as the poor, whereas when humans are alive, there is a sharp contrast or discrimination between the wealthy and the poor, which is heartbreaking. This is in a very simple way, he puts across such a powerful philosophical idea that death equalizes all of us. We all turn into ash or uh, mud, but when we are alive, we always uh, host these differences about rich, poor, ugly, pretty, uh, a low class, high class, etc. Now, if we contemplate on this basic idea of the poem, we too can learn a lot from this poem. Going further, in the stanzas 19 to 23, he focuses on the rustic graves and on the talents that these people may have had. He believes that if their potential and their talent were given equal opportunity, by good luck, by opportunities, by people, then they too could have been great musicians or poets like Milton, or great administrators like Oliver Cromwell, and kings or popular leaders. But unfortunately, they could not get these opportunities. So he focuses on the rustic graves, and he is saddened by the fact that though these graves are not ornamented, not beautified like the marble monuments of the rich people, yet these graves hold within them memories of the simple villagers who had died by their family people, by their family members. And stanzas 24 to 32 include the poet's own epitaph. He believes that someday he too would die, and how he would like people to remember him. This is a fact that we all forget, that one day we too shall die, and how we should be remembered by the other people. We all have this urge that we should be remembered by family and friends. But what should we do to make ourselves remembered, keep ourselves in the memories of our loved ones? So he defines what kind of a person he is, and with that note, the poem closes. So it is a very simple elegy, but it contains lots of powerful philosophical ideas which get you thinking about how we also should conduct ourselves in our lives. The poem focuses on the ordinary village people who lie buried in the country churchyard, and whose simple graves stand in contrast to the magnificent tombs of the rich and the famous people. But let me remind you, he uses powerful metaphors and comparisons to say that they too could have been like a pure gem or a beautiful desert flower, and they could have also given away their fragrance or their sparkle to the world if they had opportunities, but unfortunately they did not have these opportunities. Now let us see what are the literary devices that have been used. Students, you are second year students, and you know what literary devices or figures of speech are. So literary devices or figures of speech are the tools used by writers and poets to enhance, to beautify, and convey their emotions and feelings and ideas to the readers. They use beautiful words or comparisons to enhance, as I said, to decorate, to make their lines more beautiful, and to convey more powerfully their emotions and feelings to the readers. Thomas Gray has also used many literary devices to make the poem appealing, and here is an analysis of some of the devices used by him. The first device that catches our attention is that of assonance. Assonance is a repetition of vowel sounds in the same line. That there, for instance, in the line, you will find the sound of oo repeated very often, oo and o. Okay, so there at the foot of the yonder nodding beach, here the sound of o is repeated quite frequently, and we can say that the figure of speech or literary device that the poet has here used is that of assonance. I can give you another example, is that of I. Okay, listen to these lines. Hands that the rod of empire might have swayed. You will find the sound of I being repeated very often. Now, the second important and interesting figure of speech or literary device that he has used is that of a transferred epithet. In the opening lines, there is a line, "The ploughman homeward plods his weary way." Now, though he is talking about the ploughman being weary or tired, but he has used this adjective weary not for the ploughman but for the way, as if he is saying that the path is tired or weary. All right, but actually this word is meant for the ploughman who has worked throughout the day and is naturally tired and walking in a tired way towards his home. So the word weary is actually meant for the plowman in the line. The plowman homeward plods his weary way, but since he has shifted or transferred the epithet to way, we can say that he has used the epithet, that the figure of speech transferred epithet in this line. Another literary device or figure of speech used by Thomas Gray is alliteration. You all might be aware that alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds in the same line in quick succession. For instance, the sound of her in sound, not letter, sound of her in the line, haply some hoary headed swain may say, we find the sound her repeated in quick succession. There are many other examples which you can extract from your text. Another figure of speech used by Thomas Gray is that he has used a lot of imagery. Now, what is an imagery? An imagery is creating or building up word pictures which appeal to our five senses: the sense of sight, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the sense of touch, and the sense of hearing. So he has used beautiful word combinations so that we can easily imagine, actually feel those scenes in our mind, and that makes it a beautiful word picture. For example, there at the foot of yonder nodding beech. Beech is a kind of a very old tree which is gently swaying in the breeze, and there the poet wants to rest for a while. Or the next with dirges due in sad array, and each in his narrow cell forever laid. These are lines which create an imagery which help us to perceive things through our five senses. Another uh, device which he has used very frequently is personification. You all know that personification is to give human qualities to inanimate objects. For example, let not ambition mock their useful toil, or flattery soothe the dull cold ear of death. So he warns us, the privileged people, the ones who are more lucky than the poor rural people, that we should not make fun or we should not mock these poor people. So he is personifying ambition, flattery, death, and knowledge. You just note that the word ambition has begun with a capital letter, so has flattery, death, and knowledge. This means using a capital letter in the middle of the sentence makes it a noun, and here the qualities ambitious people, or those who love flattery or death or knowledge, they have all been personified as people who have not been kind towards the poor people. And I told you in the beginning that uh, these people are these pre-romantic poets. They have the element of neoclassical element as well as the romantic element in their poems. So in there will be a 5-mark question for you which will ask you, trace the neoclassical elements in the poem of Thomas Gray's Elegy, and what are the neoclassic elements that you can find. The neoclassic elements are the use of personification, the use of iambic pentameter, and the use of classical words in his poem. And the romantic elements, that is the elements of the coming new age, that is the romantic age, are the poem is highly subjective. By subjective I mean the poet is talking about his personal experience in a graveyard which made him write these lines in a reflective mood. So the poem is subjective. Then an important quality of the Romantic age was the element of nature. There is a beautiful description of nature and the rural landscapes, and the poem is in a very simple narrative style using simple words, which makes us easy for us common people to understand the poem. So I have given you as much information related to your exams about Thomas Gray's Elegy written in a country churchyard. In my next video, I shall share another analysis of your next poem. Keep watching. Thank you.